You could start
when
charging.
when they were getting up this book down here,
Yeah.
they didn't even come see me and ask me anything.
Well, that book left a lot to be desired, I think.
Certainly did.
I thought it was
Yeah.
a very good book, but I haven't been prominent enough to affect people
Mr. Whitner, where were you born?
across the street.
What was the address that you...
That's 70.
Is that
That's
Steve?
618. This is 702.
618 Oak. Do you mind telling me what year?
97. February 5th, 97.
And you have lived in Sanford ever since then?
Yeah.
All your life?
I was in the Army a little while, and I was up at college for a year, but yes, but it's been my home.
What college did you attend?
University of Florida.
Have you been up there lately? Imagine you find a lot of changes.
I haven't been up there since 69, I think.
What years were you in the service?
Just a piece of 1 year. I was in this ROTC at the university when the war broke out. They told us, all right, you boys stay right here till we tell you what to do. And the spring of 18, they sent us all up to Plattsburgh, New York for officers training camp. During that period, they fell short on, that was an infantry camp, and they fell short on field artillery, junior officers. And they selected 400 up at Plattsburgh to go down to the officers training camp out of Louisville. And Zach Taylor. And they got all of our math records. They wanted somebody that had trigonometry, plain and solid geometry. So I got among the 400 chosen for that. And war gave up just as I threw that. Well, look, I never wanted to fight. I wanted to be in my line of duty. But I'm so glad I did.
Right. Where were your parents from?
Well, look, you see, my own mother died when I was born, and I don't know too much about that side of my family. But I think they were from New Hampshire, I think.
Did they come to Florida directly from New Hampshire?
No, he had a wholesale grocery business in New Hampshire, I think, and he sold out and came down to Savannah and had developed another big wholesale grocery business.
Do you know the year?
No. Then he sold out and came down here and planted groves. And if members of the family had been able to keep taxes paid up on the properties they owned, we'd have been pretty well off.
A lot of people had that problem then, didn't they?
Yeah, he had one of the biggest orange groves in Florida. Big at that time, not anymore. He had a 100-acre orange grove right here at Ovina. I got $25 for signing a quit claim to a piece of property out there. That's all I got out of my Alexander grandfather.
How many were in your family?
Hmm?
How many were in your family? Your immediate family?
We have 2 daughters, that's all.
You have 2 daughters. What about your mother and father? Were you the only child?
No, I've got Elizabeth Gallant out here. She's my sister, half-sister. And so we weren't a large family. I got more grandchildren, though. I got 7 grandsons.
Do you really? Are they around in this area?
One of them lives in Tampa, and one of them lives up just this side of the Wisconsin, in Illinois, just with this side of Wisconsin line.
What was your father's full name?
Benjamin Franklin Whitner, number 4. Oh, BF1 was born the year Washington was inaugurated.
Okay.
BF2 was born in 1819. BF3 was born in 1842. BF4 was born in 1868. And I was born number 5 in 1897.
Were you the only one born in the South that you know of?
The family came in at Charleston. And,
Really?
so BF1 was born in South Carolina, and so was BF2. But my grandfather was born in Georgia, more or less by accident.
Just passing through.
His wife's mother was daughter of the president of the University of Georgia. And there was a little funny thing there. He had several daughters. One of them married great-grandfather, that's his picture on the wall. And the other one married, on the JN line, married another B.F. Whitner that lived in South Carolina. If the two Mrs. B.F.'s came together to see their mama, you know, it's sort of a mess. Oh.
Tell me some of your early recollections of Sanford. What was Sanford like?
Well, you know where Mellonville comes out again and beyond the airport boulevard. I was born across here, but my mother died when I was born. My grandparents lived out there on that corner.
Was that near Fort Reed? Was that?
Well, I think when they put the little railroad in, the station was named Fort. No, they had a little old Nora platform to get on and off, right where the airport boulevard comes across the railroad site. But anyhow, Fort Reed was the post office, and it also went by the name of Silver Lake. The first Presbyterian church was torn down when they built the airfield. And, you know, we failed to keep. And Whitners are traditionally all Presbyterians. Then the grandfather married into the Randolph family, and he became an Episcopalian.
Where were the Randolph family from? The reason I asked you that,
there's millions of them.
I would assume the only ones I know about are from Virginia. Was that?
Oh yes, yeah. The Florida branch, the Randolphs were intermarrying, and the Florida branch, the grandson of the old man that came in, he's got a long story with him. He moved down the Tallahassee area, and he said, look, I want to take the Randolphs out where other people live. We had his branch of the Randolphs itself is quite numerous now. You know, we had a year ago, last November, we had a reunion up Tallahassee Railway. And I think I was the oldest Randolph that was there. Let me sit at that table and say grace. One of the days you had a round
Is
collar
that all
on.
they did for you?
Look, we're talking about things that are not Sanford.
That's all right. It might lead into something that we need to know. Tell me about your childhood in Sanford. What did you do?
I lived out here in the country. I had a wonderful time. That was right after the big freeze, all. My family had lost everything at the Civil War. They'd come down here and built up groves. They were just getting to wouldn't call them rich maybe, but they were comfortably well-to-do. And then in the freeze and reduced us all.
Was your family on the Union side?
There may be some of the Alexanders back up that way, and as I say, I don't know too much about that family. But no, my grandfather went through there, wounded twice. And at 26, he was an acting major. I hadn't yet gotten his papers from the Confederate capital, and so generous according to the cabinet. But anyhow, that's you got that picture. That's all.
Were the streets paved when you were young?
Not until 1908 did we have any,
Really?
nor any county pavements either.
Which were the first ones that were paved?
As far as the county goes, there's a 9-foot road up Sanford Avenue and out 6 or 8 miles, 9 feet wide
This was towards Orlando?
towards Orlando. That was the Orlando Road in those days.
No, did they use brick
And
for that?
then they used brick, and they built out Celery Avenue. And that same year we had Park and Oak and Magnolia paved out to 10th Street.
Was that
and
work
First
done?
Avenue.
Yes.
First Avenue.
Was that work done by the city or county, or did they bring in outside help for that?
Sheriff Hand, he had a livery stable, he had wagons and horses.
Where was the stable? Excuse me, to interrupt you, but
Yeah, it was, you know where that filling station is? It became the one of the bus stations.
right.
It's gone. That's where his livery stable was. We had another one down on Park Avenue and Fulton Street. That was another man, but
So you had two at the same time then?
we had two. Oh yeah, I see Sanford was quite prosperous when the freeze came along, and the young men wanted nice rigs to rent to take the girls out with and so forth. We were quite an up and coming place when there were 3,500, but I don't think Orlando was more than 2,500 at that time. We outdate Orlando.
Someone said they also had boarding houses for the railroad here.
Well, I don't think in any organized way. We had the only hospital in this area of the state.
Really?
Out where the old express office and the old station was. That was the only hospital in this area of the state. And when the Atlantic Coast Line bought out the plant system in 1903, they closed that down and used a hospital at Waycross, Georgia for the whole system.
How large was the hospital?
I don't know. A rambling old wooden house. But the first hospital in Orlando in my time, it was founded in about 1903 by the gift of a big old house. And they built a long arm on it. And that was a combined hospital and old folks home.
Where?
In Orlando. And I can't tell you where. it could be found out all right. Because I know my father used to go, they'd have a ball every year to raise money. You'd get on the train and go down to Orlando for the hospital ball.
How many hotels were here as such?
There was, you know, where that big old Montezuma is. We had that. I think that was built for before the freeze to be a hospital. Oh, they didn't say hospital in those days. What's another word they used? Uncle Hardy had a house built next to sanitarium, or something like that. And it was built for that. Then the freeze came, and he moved on up to Jacksonville, Dr. Caldwell. And there's Caldwells around here too, you know. And
That was the only hotel at the time?
no, the Sanford House. That was the hotel of South Florida when it was built.
Really?
That was before the FEC went down the coast. This house across here was built by a dentist. When they got as far as St. Augustine, he left here and went to St. Augustine where the money was coming down. And that's the house that my father rented in 1890, and I was born in 97 right over here.
Oh, I see.
But we were a prosperous, biggest town, I guess. We were probably bigger than Tampa, probably the biggest town south of Jacksonville.
Now, this was when the steamships were coming in. They had several lines coming in here at that time?
Yes, the only one that I had any personal knowledge of was the old Clyde line, and I hated to see it go. You've seen the pictures of the old Fred DeBarry, which has been the DeBarry line for Count DeBarry's private use. And he took other passengers too. But then the Clyde bought the DeBarry line. And we had then we had the next big one was City of Jacksonville, and then the Osceola, which was 250 feet long, about 4 decks. And
what were the accommodations like on it? What were the accommodations like on it?
On those 3 boats, good.
Really?
DeBarry had them good on account of his guests, and the others were likewise good food, nice staterooms, and beautiful river. They went in 28 because they couldn't earn their way. When they were put on, they carried freight and passengers. And they tell me, and this, I haven't done any specifics, that back in the 80s and early 90s, that they had as many as 100 little steamers up and down from Jacksonville, Pulaski to Sanford. They also had a line from Pulaski up the Ocklawaha to Silver Springs. But that was the best way of transportation in those days.
Very few
When my
roads, I
stepmother
imagine.
came to Florida in 87 or 88, they came down the river to Pulaski, then up the river to Leesburg, and where you wanted to go from there was by
Did you
wagon
ever,
and mule.
did you ever go by boat anywhere? Ride on?
Oh, I rode on all 3 of those.
Did you? What was the average price of a ticket, say, if you're going to Jacksonville?
I couldn't tell you, but it was very little in the old days. If you were able to sit it out and you wanted to look at the river anyhow, you didn't pay much to get on the boat.
Did your ticket usually cover your meals as well as your cabin?
Their regular ticket did, yes. And as I started to say, this was a tourist bottom to St. Augustine. That old 200-room hotel. no wiring, no plumbing. But beautiful, the first floor, beautiful large rooms for the guests, and smaller rooms for card parties, and a wonderful dining room. And it was very popular. And it wasn't torn down in 1920 or 21.
They have a special dock for those.
Oh, yeah.
What about, these originally started to bring supplies down this far, did they not?
Mm-hmm.
Who unloaded them? Did they just, whoever was around, did they have dock hands or what?
Well, in the latter days of the Clyde line, they had the help on board. Now, the agency down there had to do shifting and loading of on wagons. But they had 2 or 3 employees too. Mm-hmm. But the ones that regularly loaded and unloaded the boat, they rode with the boat.
What did we send out from here for them going back?
Of course, just ordinary freight.
We didn't send any fruit or anything like that at the time?
There might have been a little of that, but
agriculture.
That was generally handled by small boats transferred here. They hauled boats from Lake Harney. We had 2 little boats that I remember very well. One was the Heck, and one was the Alligator. Mm-hmm. And the fun little story about the Alligator, it has been used on Lake Apopka, just around on the lake there. And old man Paganhart, you ever hear him? That's a family, and I don't know who could tell you about him. But he kept a nice covered launch for parties and so forth. But he bought the old Alligator. And you know, there is continuous water from Lake Apopka. Mm-hmm. But it took him 6 weeks clearing underbrush on the side, or digging a little deeper here. It took him 6 weeks to bring the Alligator down the side. But then it was a freight-only boat. It hauled a great deal of fruit from the east coast. It was closest to Sanford, our railroad here. And haul it to Lake Harney and put it on the boat and bring it up here, and then they put it on the train here. Of course, that ceased after the flood road. This was a great place. Plenty of saloons, and after you couldn't have saloons, plenty of brown tigers.
How many saloons were there?
I don't know. Many.
I think Martha Fox told me about Hines. That was across from her father's office.
That was one of the later ones in the later days, where there wasn't quite as much going on as there was in the old days.
She mentioned Joe's Smokehouse, too.
Yeah, but that was not a saloon.
Oh, it wasn't?
That was, they may have sold stuff, but it wasn't in evidence. They had all smoker supply, and they ran numbers games out of there.
Who owned that? Do you remember?
God, I recognize her. I can't. Joe Smokehouse. And we had a great old on the corner where the parking lot is. We had a great old restaurant for a while. I remember the day when there wasn't any restaurant except the one where the train stopped. They carried no diners. This was a dinner stop. They had a good, they had a restaurant that did very well out here. Matter of fact, 2 of them, one on by the train and one in the old building that was a hotel and restaurant. And by the way, it's a shame they put what they did on top. There was no turkey shots.
I remember it.
And with the pictures.
It was very much like the one in Tampa that this plant built. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And it was a shame to put that square thing up. And as a matter of fact, if somebody had money enough, they ought to get pictures and restore it.
Do you remember the drummers that they had for the train, for the restaurant? Martha said they had black man that used to beat a drum to let everybody know they could get off for meals?
No, but I used to ride back and forth from Chattahoochee to Jacksonville. My grandfather, for 8 years, I was administrator of the hospital there. And I spent 7 of those 8 years. In the summertime, I spent the summers up there. And, but we'd get off at Lloyd's to eat. And Lloyd's had a magnificent eating place, not the building, but the food. And you stop there to get food.
What did downtown look like? The main street of
Well,
town?
you ought to find a picture or two. We had a big fire in the 80s that probably altered it then. But I think some of you, well, the one with the streetcars, 1908. There wasn't much doing until 1908. You get a pretty good idea if you can get the picture of the streets with the old streetcars.
I have a
And with
plate.
Mr. Chase in a little Buick, and named him Roster, and Martha's got that old book, and it's a.
They named them for people in town?
Huh?
They named the cars for the people?
No. The Mr. Chase was, you can't remember little old white Buicks. No doors, back seat and the front seat. Buick, 1908 Model 10. And Rasta and Jan Whitner and S.O. Chase and somebody else. Pretty much the group that the Chases had to put up the money. The group that built the Little Belt Railroad, that they called it the Sanford and Indian River. Well, that brings up another story. Plant system was made up of a number of little individual railroads. They all came out of Sanford. And Ingram, James Ingram, was president of the South Florida Railroad. He lived at his house still stands out there on the end of Sanford Avenue, way out in about 5-acre yard there. He tried to persuade I just named his name. Plant. He tried to persuade Plant to go down the East Coast. He got as far as they organized, and this is written up in the Historical Society books you can get out of Miami. And he organized an expedition to go through the Everglades beneath Lake Okeechobee. And it was made up mostly of people from Sanford and Geneva. There were some others. And they piled through that swamp. They thought they weren't going to get through. Mr. Chase was there, and a cousin of my father's that had lived with us. They were raised together. He was an orphan, and my grandmother took him. She was taking people on all the time. And he wrote the story up, but I had an appointed secretary that I can't tell you the name of. But you find the two stories in these, in different different numbers.
Okay.
One day, Mr. Chase, they'd get in that swamp. They'd push canoes with what they have most of the time in water that deep, till they'd get an island where they could build a fire and spend the night. But they kept coming back to the same place. So one day Mr. Chase said, I wore woolen drawers. Because you may not think so, but in those hot kind of conditions, woolen drawers give you... He took his drawers off and climbed the pine tree and tied the drawers up.
So he could find his way back.
or to keep going away from it. It took them a long time to get through. They didn't think to look. And there was no Miami then. That was Fort Dade. I think it was Fort Dade. Dade kind of makes me sort of remember that. It was just a little fishing village. But the old man Plant wouldn't build. He built down to Fort Myers. What he was, only thing he had in mind was building across through that swamp. So Ingram resigned from his.
Well, that was sort of a rivalry between Plant and Flagler at that time, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Wasn't that what prompted a lot of this growth?
Yeah, and he sold Flagler by going down the East Coast. Mm-hmm. And Flagler made him vice president in charge of all, not of the track, but in all of the building and all the building and the real estate deals. So, and incidentally, he gave Mr. Chase, who he worked with for many years. Mr. Chase worked for England a long time. Mr. Chase was at one time treasurer of the South Florida Railroad. He tells a fun story there. He had an engagement. He had to leave midnight the next day to go to Philadelphia, where he had a wealthy brother, and who helped him get started here. So they put the train for Tampa had already left. So they got one of these little teapot locomotives and one car. He had to take the payroll down to Tampa. Old First National here, he used to make the payroll, and my father actually put it in envelopes for him, and we had passes as long as But anyhow, he got on the road, and there was the train stuck. They got off. There was the engineer sitting on the track with a book. Some of the wheels had come off the track. He was sitting there with a book telling him how to get the wheels back on.
Because it's better than just sitting.
Oh.
Tell me some of the businesses that were here.
Well, Old Man Hill claimed to be the oldest. And the Vincent Fish Market claimed to be the second. Still going. And, oh Lord, Chasing Company was the third, I think.
Well, what business was Mr. Vincent in?
Fish Market.
Was he down at the
Look,
docks?
after the Grove froze out, we had gobs. This St. John's was a good, pure river then. It wasn't none of this pollution stuff. And it was full of fish. And they had these flood plains that went back and forth. There was all kind when the water was up, the fish could go in there for
Feeding.
yeah, and for propagating.
Mm-hmm.
And we sent trainloads of fish out of here. Fish and railroads and the necessary and small patches that sold vegetables close around. It is what Sanford insisted on. Of course, you had to have grocery too. You had to have, but that's that. The Old First National Bank stayed open and was the only bank south of Pulaski that stayed open. And the First National deposits dropped to a total of 65,000. Mr. F.B. Forrest, F-O-R-S-T-E-R, and my father was the only two in the bank, and I don't think they got very much out of it. Where was that bank? What was
it?
Right by the Atlantic. As a matter of fact, the old bank built that building.
Did
And it never should have closed. When it closed, it had a good statement.
Why did it close?
Simply because there was no Federal Reserve where you could get paper money and silver. They had correspondents in Jacksonville and one or two other places. But when that 29 bloody Friday came, people rushed to the bank. Our correspondents in Jacksonville said the paper's good, but we have got to hold on to the silver and the paper money we have because we can't get any more. That's what closed the First National Bank. They paid, the minute you close the bank, all your assets go down. The people that, your farmers and all that you're loaned to, they had a hard time getting along. Everything went down. They sold the old building for $70,000, the receiver did. They paid off 70 cents on the dollar. The one up on the other corner, the Seminole Road County Bank, paid off 1 cent.
No kidding. We had two banks here then at that time?
Yeah. Oh, we had three.
Three? What was the other one?
The People's Bank, as far as a dress shop is, that little corner building across the street from the drugstore.
Right.
That was the People's Bank. And the two other banks floated it. It was a member of the Witham system. And when the boll weevil came, this was just in one way off from them. They were mostly up in the cotton country. And the Witham system went flat. And rather than see a bank go flat, the two banks here took over all their paper and worked it out the best we could and kept the bank open. But
what was the government of the town like at that time? Who was mayor? Do you remember?
Forest Lake was mayor a good portion of the time, and I couldn't tell you the name of that.
Do you remember the holidays that used to be celebrated? What kind? When 4th of July, I assume.
4th of July,
celebrated.
Labor Day, Christmas, Thanksgiving. I wasn't particularly aware of anymore.
In what way? Did they have parades in town?
Yeah, the cowboys would come in, they'd have these rows of poles, you know, with arms out and hooks. And they had they big picnic and barbecue and sack races or any other darn thing. Baseball games. They had no baseball teams. They had to get one up for the occasion.
Where'd they hold all these?
Down along the lake shore. But the lake shore then came up nearly to First Street. The old Leffler block was built on Sanford Avenue, and it crossed First Street.
It was a dead end?
That was a dead end. Mm-hmm. And then back of there was high ground that was pretty well cleared, though they could clear up. That was where they had the barbecues in there.
Mm-hmm. Did they have farms right on down to the lake at that time?
Look, that was when farms were just coming in. Mm-hmm. My grandfather farmed for a while where the Elks Club is, now on east. He and Mr. Chase. And by 1908, there used to be just a crooked dirt road out where Celery Avenue is. And in 1908, they put marl down. They called it paving. They put marl down. That was the boulevard. And by 1908, I suppose there must have been 15 or 20 farms stretching out that way. But that was the beginning. And those old days were very profitable. The celery they grew and sold here was very satisfactory.
Do you know who decided on celery for this area?
Yeah. Mr. Chase said his family up north always, in the garden plot, they always had some celery. He thought you could grow it down here. So I had a little low place that was moist pretty well, and he had been growing it on his own place out across the street from where that dairy is.
Yeah, Sanford Avenue.
So he suggested to Jan Whitner and Joe Cameron and some others, let's try celery. And my grandfather claimed he sold the first amount of celery that was put into a refrigerator car. It wasn't quite a car full. That same year, just a little later, Jan Whitner, whose farm was out at Indian Mound Village. And but he, a little bit later, he sold a full car. I think it was perhaps 1900. Well, it took some little time to gather up it, because the next 3 or 4 years there was an occasional little farm on Celery Avenue. And in 1908, the big boys up north said, "Here, we got something." So they came down here and bought up big areas and subdivided it, and they had some facts from small farms. Anybody can go to Sanford and buy 5 or 10 acres and live handsomely. Well, the good farmers during that period all did very well, but there was more failures than you can think of.
What year was that? Around what year?
That, I would say, that rose from 1907 or 8 on up to for the next 10 years, finally. But there was many failures. Our people dropped that lot. Now, some of the good ones didn't. Mr. Brisson farmed out there. He only had 5 acres. He did a lot of his own work. And he raised good stuff. The yields were good. He made enough to establish himself in the real estate business over in Daytona and got to be a millionaire. But he got his beginning on Sanford celery.
That was Brisson?
Yeah.
The same as the man that was in the funeral?
Well, the present man's grandpa.
I see.
And
And that was all down here.
How about trips out of town? Were there many people going to Orlando and from town? Any reason?
well, the train ran from my time on. It was quite a bit going. Incidentally, when they started our first railroad, Grant came down and drove one of the first spikes.
Did he? Where did he drive it in?
They shipped a little old tiny teapot train, and Mr. Chase said it must have weighed about as big as one of your Cadillac limousines. So I helped push it off of the boat and up on. Then we put 2 rails down from Sanford Avenue over to about a couple blocks beyond Oak Avenue. So we pushed it up and got it on those rails and just ran it up and down on those rails for a few days for people to come and see what it looked like. Oh, of course, in 1908 we got also a streetcar, 2 streetcars.
How will they run? I remember seeing
Gasoline engine.
Gasoline.
Yeah.
You ever have any problem with fire?
No. One of those things stood out here in the railroad yards for many years. And I know I used to get Randall Chase myself, he'd go out and play on it. Sit up in there.
Where was the trolley?
Where was it?
From Oak Avenue to Sanford and turned and went up until it hit the Sanford and Everglades Railroad. Then it ran that railroad all the way around till it came into the Oviedo track, and then down the Oviedo track and back into town.
Oh my goodness, that
So-
was a long way.
Yeah, and they had two cars, and they could run them like this, you know. They all the school children. They had a contract for that for a while.
Did they name the cars?
I
Have
don't
names or
think so.
anything?
But now I go back to this Chase family. He has done more for this town than any one person. We needed this. First place, we needed some kind of light better than kerosene. He put out. He created the gas company, and it was for sale just as soon as he didn't want it. But he said the town ought to have. In 1908, he says the town ought to have electricity. It's pretty bad not having electricity. So he built the electric plant. And
Where was that?
you know this city tool house out here? Well, anyhow, so he sold both of them finally to the Southern Utilities Company, which in turn sold the Florida Power and Light. It may not have been called that, but I think it was, till they bought it from the Southern Utilities.
I see.
And some other company bought the gas plant. These things, then he built the first swimming pool down here on the lake. That was before the cars were very numerous.
Was
And
this,
the people that needed to go swimming, they couldn't afford to go to the beach.
was this where the zoo is now? I remember someone talking about an old swimming pool in that area.
No, there was one. They I don't know what they used to keep the sides up, but
They used cement in that old one out there.
yeah, I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
Do you know where it is now?
No, sir, no, approximately where it was. I don't know if they took it out when they put the zoo in or what.
I would like to have seen it again.
Mhm.
Oh, what did they call it? Something Park. Very fancy name.
How'd you get there?
Well, we got there. They built a dock and taking Hart's boat, hauled you back and forth.
Were they?
But there was an old road. If you had
Went back through Monroe, didn't it?
it didn't get as far as Monroe. It came in catty-cornered. It was nearly Monroe when you got there, but
And Mr. Chase built a pool. Where was that one located?
down here on First
Oh,
Street,
right.
the one that just tore.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was a terrible thing to do. Trying to alleviate a problem instead of solving it, which was a bad way, I think.
Well, I know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
But the point was, there wasn't any decent place for the Sanford boys to go swimming unless you were rich.
Mhm.
And that was what it was built for.
Of course, San Orlando was not too far away. Did you ever get over there?
I can remember going over there when I was about 4 years old. You went there with a fat old horse and a little buggy. And it took you a long time to get there. And you stayed there 2 or 3 hours, swam and had a big picnic. It was generally a big gathering when you went. And then you drove home and you got home late in the afternoon. Yeah.
You mentioned Grant coming to Sanford. Do you know any other VIPs or people that were important at the time that visited Sanford?
Look, there were several, but I can't name them. That's the one that sticks.
Mm-hmm. I think.
President Arthur King.
Did it?
And He went out here to Belair where the Chases lived because, well, that was one thing. That was the first experimental citrus attempt in the state of Florida. And have you see the tremendously tall, what?
Well, General Sanford did that.
Yeah, General Sanford did that.
Chase, I mean, he started it.
Yeah, he did it. Yeah. He started the grove. That grove first was down by Gertrude Springs. And didn't prosper there. You know,
Where's Gertrude?
look, you know where the first bridge we came to, there's a creek, and the creek still runs out under a bridge down on the lakefront. The creek still runs in there. They boxed it all up. But there was a little spring there. I expect the size of the hole was about double this rum. But a nice little spring. And I don't know, I doubt if it runs now, but it drained off into this branch.
How many artesian wells were downtown, Mr. Whitner?
I can remember 3 out at the corner of Palmetto Avenue and First Street, one at the corner of Park Avenue and First Street. Well, they were the famous ones. Then
What do you mean famous?
they were well known. Then Fernald put in a little bathtub arrangement. It was there for horses to water in, but that wasn't really important. And that led to our very famous sub-irrigation and sub-drainage system.
In the farms?
Those two, they in dry weather it was all right, but in wet weather, those fountains ran all the time.
Did
And
Is that
they
why-
made a sloppy
Yeah.
crossing.
Is that why they capped them eventually?
Well, before that, I mean, they left for a long time. The Presbyterian minister here was, and I don't know what minister was here, but Lucy Moulton would. And he contrived to control flow of water, put 3 boards to it, triangular. He dug ditches and put them out far enough for dispersion of the water, and then covered them up. And that was our beginning of this sub-irrigation system. I don't know whether you bored into that.
No, sir, I don't know anything about that.
We had the most wonderful water control of any place.
Now, you're talking about the farm area?
Yeah.
Just-
See, we every 20 feet, these farm blocks were laid off mostly 330 feet. They'd leave a roadway between each two. They had 300 feet of clay tile put together, but at about, say, 12 inches down. Then they would cover that with sawdust and then put the dirt back. On the end where the well was, it went all the way down towards the lake, go through what we call pockets, about that big around and about that deep. And they would join these lines into the pocket. And on the other hand, there would be a pocket. And then there'd be a pipe out into the ditch. Well, you could stop up the bottom end in this pocket and turn the well on and take the plug out up at the top. You could fill that, you could wet the top of a good big area overnight. Also, you could shut off your well and open the plug at the bottom. And after quite hard rains, the next morning you could go in there with a plow, the water going back through the sawdust into the pipe and out. This was, of course, they were very costly. You couldn't afford it now. In those days, things were cheap.
Where did the help come from that worked in the fields around here?
Now, you mean?
No, so back then.
Oh, each farmer got his up. In the early days, most of them had 2, 3 little houses to to house their help. And then on Saturdays, after we finished a 60-hour week in the fields, they were permitted to take a mule and wagon and go to town. And each house generally had a little plot where they could grow his turnips and stuff like that.
Were they all black?
Practically. I worked out there. Brack Perkins worked out there. Charlie Merriweather worked out there. We all worked for the same man. Not at the same time, but these farmers were glad to take on an occasional boy that wanted to learn farming or find out whether he wanted to be a farmer.
How were they paid, the blacks, do you know?
Yeah, I got the same price. I got except when I was packing celery, I got $1.25 a day for 12.5 cents an hour for 60 hours. I made $7.50 a week. When I was packing celery, I got $9 a week.
That was a
There was
big
no
cut
packing
off.
houses. They would raise the water up, get the celery turgid to stand the shipment north, and we crawled between the rows packing. And a lot of the time it's about like that. And $9 a week for that, $7.50 for the other work.
You mentioned...
no tractors and all. And there was only one truck. When I was working out there the winter of 14, 15, there was only one truck in Sanford. F.F. Dutton had a truck.
You mentioned refrigerator cars, sending everything out. I didn't realize they had refrigeration then.
Look, Abby Hutchison was Abby Downey. Her father was an Englishman, and I think probably her mother didn't come over from England, but English family up in New England. He was a man of some wealth, and he and Forest Lake and 1 or 2 others established the first ice factory south of Jacksonville, I expect. I think I'm pretty safe in saying that. So we had ice before my day.
How'd they make it?
They had a steam engine. It had compressors and made it just like roughly just like we do now. And we've had the ice most of the cars within a radius of 100 miles. We come in here and be iced and go back loaded, come back and re-iced, and then go north. This was when they built the big mountain ice place, the second largest ice factory in this country. And they had a loading platform about a half a mile long with cars on either side, moving tracks. They had storage for 20,000 tons. They worked all the year round. And they had good methods of moving it out and putting it on and getting it. Then when the season started, they would start buying ice wherever they could get it. And
In other words, if
in
they
other
would,
words, they had to make all the ice they could and buy all the ice they could.
did they put the ice directly on the produce?
No. They crates put in there, and here would be a row of crates. And across each row of crates, there was a slat, just the length of the width of the car. Nail was driven into each crate. They had, I think probably about 2 tiers of that. And then at each end of the car, there was a bunker for ice. And they generally stopped someplace in the Carolinas and refilled the bunker.
That would have been about how many miles they could go without refilling.
I wouldn't know. Of course, actually, weather would make a difference too. But halfway to New York,
So in
like
other
we
words, they
say,
had to
500
have-
600 miles.
They had to have ice stops all the way, or they couldn't have gotten.
Well, they
to New
only
York.
used one stop between here and New York.
Oh, I see.
Of course, you ice a car here and send it down to the Everglades and load it and get it back. That ice that was put in there before it went to the Everglades was put in there gone or gone. Those cars had to be loaded twice, once before they were loaded and once after they were loaded. But that was quite a sight. I used to take visitors out to this thing, and they would be absolutely fascinated. 2 continuous chains of ice going down, and men ever so often with these pikes. They were careful about the height of. You don't lift or anything. You pike and you had to aim right, and you had to get it in the. You had to get it in the bunker. Well, they learned to do that thing. We had the second largest ice factory in the country.
My goodness. What about organizations in town? Do you remember any that were here?
Yeah, but I never paid much attention to that. We had, of course, during the 1908 to about 1912 maybe, we had several big real estate companies. But that fell flat. We had a number of individuals who solicited bought sellers from growers and had customers on the other end. And
They had the middleman even then, huh?
Chase and Company was about the only big company working on that in the early days. Then they organized the Sanford Farmers Association, and they built the big plant later that Chase bought from them, and he needed to expand. Out there where the lumber place is now. That was a tremendous outfit. But
Was the Ku Klux Klan ever active here?
I think in a very small way for a short while. I know I had a little Overland, one of these little Overlands, I forget what you call them. Anyhow, I sold it one day, and that evening I had my BFW on it. And that evening that appeared in the Ku Klux Klan.
They had parades then?
Oh, yeah.
Did they go down Main Street, or where did they have them? Oh, did they?
Yeah. I've never heard of any really bad thing. Now, of course, we had bad things. In my early days,
What kind of bad things?
I mean hangings,
Did you?
lynchings.
Really?
Matter of fact, the night before I went to the Army in May 1918, we had a home guard. I went with my father. A little white girl raped. And we had, I guess, I don't know, 100, maybe 200 men milling around up there. Forest Lake's stood up on the banister and urged him, go out and get your man, but obey the law. That was getting pretty late. I don't think they ever got the man. But in previous times, they'd catch a man, go out and hang him.
Where did they hang them?
The only ones I knew about, they'd carry him out to what's that little crossroads west of Altamont, Forest City? Carry him out and hang him out at Forest City.
You mentioned cowboys. What kind of cowboys were around?
Well, I don't know much about them. But of course, our ranching deal got pretty big around here at a time. My oldest daughter rode with the cowboys in these little races we used to have out there at the air base. She was, I guess, as good a female rider as there was. She'd ride anything. And then she had one or two little troubles, but not bad.
Was cattle industry very large back then?
It was very, very important after the big freeze, and it grew. Not like down below Arcadia, where one outfit owned maybe millions of acres. Of course, I expect that was the biggest cattle area and perhaps the biggest single ownership in portion of it that ever occurred here.
I think a lot of that had to do with they shipped them out of Tampa.
Tampa and Fort Myers, or rather a little town across the bay from, they didn't use the word Fort Myers, but it was on Fort Myers Bay there. And they shipped a great many of them to Cuba. And they shipped a lot of them from down there.
When you said, that reminded me of something someone told me, I don't remember. They said that some, talking about the fish houses down here, said that when one fish house used to ship, I believe it was, I'm not sure what kind of fish it was, but they'd ship it up farther over towards Texas and tell them they were pompano.
I never heard that
something
one.
like
Of course, the most fish we shipped were catfish.
It may have been. I started to say catfish.
Yeah, St. John's cats. And you go down to Lake Okeechobee, well, I haven't been down there right recently, but the biggest restaurant in town advertised Lake Okeechobee cats. That was
I've eaten some of those.
Yeah, huh?
I've eaten some of those.
All right, well, we shipped about here practically by the train load, maybe not every night, but in car loads, maybe every night. That was, as I say, one of the main things that kept Sanford alive.
Do you think Sanford would have survived the Depression if it had not been an agricultural area?
Well, its agricultural area was busted. That's what's busted us so hard.
I mean, if the people here had not had places to grow food to eat for themselves.
Well, maybe so, and what they could sell around town or close by where they could go in a horse and wagon. That was one of the things. Fishing deal, that deal, and railroad. At one time, we built railroad cars out here. During the war, we built railroad cars out here. Freight cars, not passenger cars.
Tell me about some of the disasters that you can remember. Were there any large fires?
Yeah, we had a good many big fires. Well, our church burned. The first one blew down, and the second one burned. And down there, you know, where, what do you call that big place it was? That big old store there on 3rd Street between That, anyhow, there was a big brick building. Well, we thought it was big. Behind that, Webb's Laundry. A lot of people thought Webb set on fire to get the insurance, but anyhow, he didn't get out fast enough, and part of the building fell on him, and
Oh, my
had a
goodness.
broken leg for a long time. Then one across from Chasing Company, where that parking lot is, there was a big building there. You may
I remember
remember.
that.
Okay, that was a big fire. Of course, the church was a big fire.
The Sanford house burned, or was
No.
that pulled down?
They prayed for it to burn. That was the most fireproof building ever was in Sanford.
Hurricane proof also, right?
Hurricane proof all.
How large was the Sanford house?
It was 200 rooms, plus
goodness.
the first floor. Remember, it was a tourist deal with entertainment rooms, card rooms. I don't know whether they had a saloon in there or not, but
I will
anyhow,
ask you what kind of entertainment they were having in there.
I couldn't tell you.
Who built that? Do you know?
Well, I've been to dances down there, but it was still there after I got out of college. Yeah.
Was that an outside interest that built that, or someone in Sanford?
I think they were a mixture, probably the majority from outside. And they owned from there to the lake. And the lake shore there didn't come quite as close to Commercial Avenue. And they had a real beautiful park in front of the hotel.
I remember seeing a picture of it.
Yeah.
It's a postcard of it, I believe.
Yeah.
Had a lot of plants and everything in it. There also was a hotel across at Enterprise, was there not?
Yeah, that was older than the Sanford House. That was built, I guess, partly because of the Barrier estate. That I don't know.
You don't know how large that was.
Oh, well, I've been in it all right. But it wasn't half as big as it. They thought it was pretty big, but it wasn't half as big as Sanford House. But it was older than the Sanford House.
Was that about where the children's home is now?
It became the children's home.
Oh, I see.
They finally tore it down. There's people, look, in the old days, we had a lot of two-story schoolhouses and so forth. None of them ever burnt. We never lost anything. Big old hotels, they never burnt. That was a children's home for a long time until it began to attract money, and the government probably threatened to move them out. But we had old wooden buildings that served their purpose well.
Well, it's a shame we didn't try to keep some of them, isn't it?
Yeah. One of the things that should never be, the old railroad station across from, well, you remember where it was.
Used to go down there to vote.
Yeah. That thing never should have been torn down. They should have preserved the platform and the whole business.
They had a fireplace at each end.
Big fireplace.
Right. And practically walk in. You remember? That was a shame.
We've torn down nearly all. We've got one old house that I think ought to be saved, and
where is that?
It's on 3rd Street, on the second block. Jack Horner knows about it now too. I always thought of it as the Will Dickens house. He had a big grocery store downtown. But Jack was fiddling in it. It belonged to Fernald before. Fernald evidently built it. Then Fernald built an apartment over his store down here and lived up there. Oh, that was an important, that Fernald business was very important. he supplied materials and labor from here down to the Lake Wales area.
Oh, really?
They put in the water systems. They put in they were tremendous operators.
Mm-hmm.
Was he sold out and left in 1915, and that business just melted like that.
Mm-hmm. Now this
house,
yes.
Yeah, he built that.
That was his house.
That was his house.
Mm-hmm.
After living in it.
Right.
And they gave it as a memorial to the Furnalls, and Lawton was his wife's mother. Furnall Lawton, yeah. And that was the first time.
I worked in that building.
That was the first time we had a hospital since the old plant system hospital was abandoned in 1903. Yeah. All the babies had to be born at home.
Name some of the doctors that were here.
Well, there's two that are Bruce and Dr. Howard. Dr. Howard was considered a very able person. For many years, he was the chief doctor, or whatever you call him, at the Missouri Insane Asylum. And he retired. I don't know what attracted him to Sanford, but he wanted to come to Florida. Well, at that day and time, this was an attractive point to stop. He was our doctor for a long, long time. And Dr. Bruce, another old man. And I don't think he was anything like the doctor that Dr. Howard was.
Did they have the offices in their homes?
They had, Dr. Bruce had his office in his home. Dr. Howard was up over the building where drugstore is there, corner of Magnolia.
Yeah.
And just to show you the difference, he was considered a very outstanding doctor. But he had two little black dogs. I don't know what the breed was. He trained them. He'd make them do tricks. He would play with them, then wipe the hand off like this and work on you. Well, my own mother died because it didn't have antibiotics and didn't have the proper cleansing.
Sepsis.
Yeah. And well, that's what the doctors were like then. And Dr. Denton came along, one of the earlier ones, and Dr. Walker. He didn't use anything violent in the way of medicine. Homeopathic doctor.
Oh, I see.
And his daughter taught me in the 8th grade.
What was the name?
Walker.
What's the biggest change in Sanford that you can think of? That you've
Too
noticed?
many people. Still, I got some I want to sell. Until it gets after me, I talk about saying, yeah, but I said, well, all the animals moved down enough so I can get a big price for what I own. I want to tell you a secret though. I talked to one real estate agent who approached me, wanted to sell the house. I said, maybe. What do you want for it? I named the price. And I said, look.
You don't want this on that thing.
That's all right.
You might not want it on there.
We might find somebody to sell you.
we wanted a 2-bedroom apartment down in Town and Lake. They wanted it nowhere else. Walking distance
Right.
to wherever you
Grocery
needed to
store
go.
and everything, sure.
Well, within 2 days, this place was sold at the price named without any questions. Matter of fact, I never knew who it was, and the person that was talking to me was careful not to let me know.
Mm-hmm.
He said, that person knows your house.
Hmm.
I said, look, we're not in the city. We can't get out of here. It might take us 6 months to 9 months to get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
She came back second time and says, look, they want your house whenever you get ready. So,
For goodness sakes.
And that's when Kay walked in.
Oh dear. What would you like to see happen in Sanford? What would you like for Sanford in the future?
less law breaking for number one. I say for police. You didn't have to lock your doors in my era today.
Never thought about it.
Less traffic. I need to. Long ones got too much traffic now. My daughter, when she went away to college, says, Daddy Sanford, that was in 1948. Says, Daddy Sanford's getting entirely too big. Let's move to Longmont.
Well, it's headed this way, apparently.
Mm.
Are there any family stories you remember pertaining to that have been told in your family about Sanford or anything?
Lots of them. I don't know what
Just-
flips to the top of my head now.
We're going to have to ask Martha Fox and you to get together with us
Those
again.
two little old churches that never had been, a little old Presbyterian church. My great-grandfather, he was elder, and because he was the only one in the area, he was, what do you call the next supervising?
Deacon?
No,
Is that-
supervising elder. And now Mr. J.N. did something interesting. When he knew it was going to be torn down, he had gotten to where he wasn't physically able. But he hired a carpenter to go under that little church. Maybe he didn't go under, he may have ripped up the floor. But to cut out a block of wood, good old cypress, I guess, but anyhow, a block of wood, and he sent that to an artist. Had a gavel made for this whole Presbyterian center.
Oh, goodness
And
sakes. How nice.
presented it to the center. From the mother church of the Presbyterian
Oh.
church there.
And where would that be now?
I don't know.
I mean, I didn't know where the center was.
S-Y-N-O-D.
Oh,
Synod.
Synod.
Synod, yeah. I don't know.
Hmm.
But there's a world of stuff around here if you knew how to dig it all up.
Well,
And Martha Fox got more of a record and all that than I have.
have you ever heard of the DuPont building?
No.
She said that was what the old Malum building was. DuPont's built that. The one that Palucci tore down, which I thought was one of the greatest architectural feature.
Now
building
wait a
in this
minute,
town.
where was that?
You know where that little park is down across from where Faust is now? Let's see, that was where Garrett's used to be.
Yeah?
That little area of that store in there. And next to it was the Malum building. Had big columns up the front. Windows.
Oh, you mean there was a 2-story and then a little 3-story
Yes, sir.
piece?
Mhm.
Oh, I know what.
Yes, sir.
But I never admired it, but then
I
it
thought
was
it was
old.
nice looking. Really did. They could have done a lot with that. They just didn't ask me.
You mean holding the bottom part too to prop up the tall part, huh?
Possibly. Do you remember any veterans in town from the Civil War?
Oh, Captain Tarver was. And really, I can't tell you much about him. Very, very old. Very flag-waving. White beard down like
I've
this.
seen his picture.
That corner house that was torn down, a corner of 6th Street and Oak Avenue. There's a big one just like it. He used to have a downstairs room, sit at the window. I'd go by and talk to him a whole lot.
Where was he from?
I don't know.
He wasn't.
Oh, I do remember one other little thing. When I moved in town, 1903, there was an old colored man that we called Uncle Kelsey. Born 1791. He's old and fragile, but he could buy a few peanuts and parch them, and then walk the street. Well, people bought those peanuts. 112 years old. I think he died right quick after that. But we had another one, Shad. Well, one of the prominent people took him north every summer to show him off uptown. He always wore a little Confederate cap. We had a little old cannon about that long, about that big around. He'd shoot that off down to the lakefront to foot of Park Avenue. One time he put in too much wet paper. And blew it all to pieces. Luckily, nobody hurt.
My goodness. I was going to ask you what happened to the cannon.
Blew it all to pieces.
Do you recall hearing about an orange house? The orange house, I assume.
Yeah, but I can't tell you anything about it. I think maybe it was an oversized house called a hotel out towards Fort Reed, but I don't know it.
You remember a lamp lighter that used to be in Sanford?
Yeah. I always thought it was one of the, I believe it's one of the Cowans. Now, I used to think it was one of the Camerons. Gaslight days. He was a cowboy. He rode the few gas streetlights. See, we had every 2 blocks we'd have on one, and then the alternate block over this way, every 2 blocks, and so forth. I don't know how many we had, 25, 30.
What street was that they were on?
They were on Magnolia Park and Oak. And I don't think Oak went up as far as, Park went all the way up to 10th Street, I'm sure.
Someone told me that Mrs. Hutchison's house used to be across Park Avenue.
That's right.
That was the end of the street?
That was the end of the street.
Did they move that when they extended the street?
That was part of the price.
I see.
And it's still a sound old house.
Looks like it. Really good. Jenny, do you think of anything else?
Not for the record.
But you know, a group that sort of...
That'd be fun to do, really would.
Yeah.
If you'd let us interrupt and ask to get the dates and things down, in a group, they don't always remember to say that.
Maybe you should have, say, not over 3 or 4. Have...
Who would you suggest?
Well, I would very strongly Martha Fox. I'm not so sure, but what Abby Hutchison would be good.
We need to talk to her the same as this, one time.
Yeah. She and her mother are 2 of the best people I've ever known. A lake ruined their business. That old,
You want
that
to
old,
Hush a minute.
okay, set it off.
That's okay.